Hey everybody, this is Dominic Kiev from Lions Rock Production, and today's guest is Bryan Fuller. He's a good friend of the Break It Down show, and this is his third visit. He is the fastest American to row across the Atlantic, or fastest redhead as he says. Today, we are focused on Elpis Row's latest project, where in December 2020, Bryan and three other rowers will be delivered to Gran Canaria, a Spanish island off the coast of Morocco, where it will launch from Playa de Mogan. Elpis will cross the Atlantic in under 30 days and arrive in Barbados, breaking the world record while raising awareness and support for the treatment of childhood cancer. Man, these people are wonderful. You can find more about this project at elpisrow.com and support their cause. That's elpisrow.com. Also, I invite you to support Save the Brave. Check them out on savethebrave.org. They're a certified 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to helping veterans with post-traumatic stress. We would also like if you support the Break It Down show on whatever platform you're listening to us: Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, iHeartRadio, whatever. Just give us a 5-star rating and positive review. It helps new listeners find us, and we sure appreciate it. The National High School Rowing Champion Carter Young joins Pete today, and he's our guest, Bryan Fuller.
This is Bryan Fuller from Power Rowing in Brookline, Mass., and I'm really excited to be on the Break It Down show.
This is, I think it's your third official visit with one show that never quite saw the light of day. So we'll call it 3.5. But first off, so everybody who knows, Bryan and I go back 25 years, and we've been friends for a long time. And I just think the world of Bryan. He's one of those guys that he climbs mountains. He does impossible things. And I'm just always so inspired by him. And the other day, Bryan announced that he was going to once again row across the Atlantic Ocean. And this time he wanted to break the record I think you set out originally to break. You are the fastest American to ever row across the Atlantic Ocean. But now
that's like the fastest redhead, though. Like, what does that mean?
Hey, you're also the fastest redhead, probably as well. So just some background. Bryan and I were spies in Bosnia. I guess technically that makes this a spy versus spy conversation. By the way, Bryan, the daughter of the guy that did all the spy versus spy cartoons has said that she's going to give us access to the artwork. So,
what?
Yeah, yeah, it's fantastic.
Wow, that's very cool.
Bryan started his own rowing gym, and it's in Brookline, Mass. And hopefully I'm going to talk him into starting one here in Orange County, because that's where everybody comes next. Because what you're doing, man, when I look at it, and this is how much of a Bryan fan I am, when I look on Yelp at the reviews that you get, it just makes me so happy, man, to see that you're actually out there doing this. You've built this community, and damn, do you guys have a strong and healthy charitable charter.
Mm-hmm. We definitely do. It's a big part of what we do here.
Why?
Well, you know what? Why not?
Okay.
Look, when people go to the gym, right? They do so for a variety of reasons. Oh, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to lose 5 pounds. I need to get in shape. There's all different kinds of levers that people do things with. Maybe I'm trying to make the crew team, so I'll do a little extra rowing to get on the crew team, or maybe I want to get a little fit. My wedding's coming up, right? Now, suppose I throw in another lever. Hey, you're doing something good for the community, right? We're going to do a little challenge, and we're going to give some money for some homeless veterans. We're going to give some money for some kids with cancer. It changes the dynamics. It all of a sudden it becomes less of a guilt response and much more of like, wow, I feel great about myself response. And I get people in some of the best shapes of their lives, and they feel amazing about doing it too. So I question why gyms aren't doing this all across the country. It seems pretty amazing to me why they're not doing it across the country.
And Bryan, my bad. So yeah. What exactly, how long is your programs, and do you offer any programs at all to get people in shape? And if so, what are do you do any screenings? How long does everything take exactly?
All right. So a typical class with me is about 45 minutes long. It's focused on cardiovascular development. Now, we do have a lot of young rowers like yourself, actually younger than yourself. I'm training a couple of them right now. They're trying to make crew teams.
Awesome.
So Brookline is actually one of the most competitive crew teams in the country for high school crew. Well, I don't think national champions, but they compete pretty regularly in the national championship. Out of the high school of a couple hundred kids, I think there's like, I want to say 80 or so kids that go out for the crew team. So it's a very competitive process to get on this crew team, and so a lot of the kids will come to me to improve their 2K time. We have a big train ups for Crash Bees. You're probably familiar with the Crash Bees.
Yes.
Yeah, so you might even be out here for that at some point. So we do a 3-month train up for the Crash Bees, and then we have a couple charity challenges that are about 3 months long, and then we do individual training for people that are, like I said, trying to just get themselves onto either a collegiate or a high school crew team.
So I wanted to make sure everybody understands, also co-hosting with us. I didn't do my job as host. I want to introduce to you Carter Young, who is a high school rower. And that, okay, great. It's on topic and everything, but Carter is a national champion at the high school level. And it's just so incredible to know that there's young dudes out there making their way. So welcome Carter to the show. And yeah, thanks for kicking in a question with Bryan. Let me back us up here. Bryan, I love the charity thing. We're partnered with Save the Brave, and I encourage, especially when folks want to complain about, I don't know, the president, because everybody wants to complain about that. Like, okay, great, you complained, but break off $5, break off $10. Your time, right, your money, your location, your attention. These are things that you can do to help someone like Bryan, someone like Save the Brave, whatever charity it is. Almost like a swear jar. If you're going to complain and rant, great, do those things, you should, but then turn right around and peel off $10. Go to Subway by Skid Row, point to the people who are homeless and less fortunate and say, I'm buying sandwiches until you guys run out of $100, and then I'm going to buy another $100 worth of sandwich. Do something. And this is what I love about Bryan, is not only is he getting other people to do something, you're doing something. And God bless, man. Who are you guys rowing for specifically with your transatlantic attempt here?
So we're actually rowing for childhood cancer. One of the during the last train up for the Crash Bees, a gentleman named Andreas came to Boston to compete, and he called me up and he said, "Hey, can I work out of your gym for a couple of days?" He's an Olympic rower. I want to say he's got a gold medal, several national championships. And he said, "Hey, I want to just train up for a couple of days just to get myself in shape for the Crash Bees, because he had a long flight over. He's coming from Athens." So him and I really hit it off, and I talked about rowing across the ocean, and he talked about winning medals, and we became good friends. And he called me up and he said, "Look, I would like to row across the ocean too." And I'm getting to my point. His coach for the Olympics, his coach's son has childhood cancer, and he's being treated at a hospital called Elpida. It's in Athens, and he says it's the largest childhood cancer facility in Europe. And I happen to be actually sitting right next to Dana Farber, which is considered one of the top cancer research and treatment centers in the world. So I said, why don't we do something? We'll partner up. You represent Elpida, and I'll represent Dana Farber. So I'm going to be representing Dana Farber for my row across the Atlantic Ocean.
Wow. And it says Jimmy Fund, too. That's the classic Boston. Ted Williams fronted that charity for decades.
Yeah.
Same child cancer, is that what that is?
That's exactly what that is. That's their kind of arm for childhood cancer. That's correct.
So they're connected. I got you. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
So, okay, let's just do this. Let's direct the audience towards where they can go and best support you guys. I mean, obviously, you're available, especially on Facebook, very active there. But where do you want people to go right now on their computers, on their phones, so they can learn about what you're doing and then push the "I'm going to help" button?
Well, it's really early yet. We aren't going to do our row until December of 2020. Okay. We have about over the course of the next year, we'll be developing corporate sponsors to help pay for our row, because it's pretty expensive. Come next summer, we'll be doing some publicity things to help promote the row, and in here in Boston and then in Athens. Really, the collection for donations probably won't start till probably October or November of 2020.
Okay.
We want to get people excited about it now. Start following us. We can go to our website at elpisrow.com. That's ELPIS row.com. It's kind of a bare bones site. You can meet the crew, kind of learn about what we're doing. There's a couple links there, but we won't be actively collecting donations until probably, like I said, October 2020. The goal being to get people to say, I'm going to sponsor you for a penny a mile. But of course it's 3,000 miles. So if we get a penny or two from like most of my friends, the people from power rowing, and just people that are just interested, we could realistically get 5,000 to 10,000 people if we can get enough publicity to follow along and donate. If we get 5,000 people to donate a penny a mile, we're looking at about $150,000 donation for childhood cancer. That's a pretty significant donation.
Yeah, I would. I'd say so for sure. A penny a mile. What does that work out to? Like $30, something like that?
$30.
Oh, come on. Okay.
Bryan, so that's awesome to hear about the row and, that you're doing this for cancer. And so I was curious to ask, being a rower that trains for 2,000 meters, in still water typically, how exactly do you, what workouts do you do to plan and train for this? I mean, I know the shell obviously is very different than a traditional rowing shell, but, do you go in open water rows typically? What do you do on the erg to train for this?
It's a great question. Long and slow. If you're training for 2K, typically you're doing 500 meter sprints and maybe some 5,000 meter pieces and maybe some 2,500 meter pieces. And, most of it's, right around 90 to 100% of your capacity trying to train for a 2K. When you're trying to train to row across the Atlantic Ocean, it's much more about time in the erg. Typically when we row, once we get into a shell, at least when we did last time, you only go at about probably a 23 pace, maybe a 22 pace. It's pretty slow. If we had, a PM5 on the boat, it would probably say something like we were doing like a 230 or something like that, or 240. It's not very aggressive. So typically I train, I'll do like an hour at around 210, 215. When we start getting closer, I'll probably bump that up to 3 hours. And just try to it's more about managing sort of like slow muscular development rather than sprints, because we won't be doing a lot of sprinting across the ocean.
For sure. And I understand it's definitely a lot of steady state and takes a lot of time in the erg. And, in that sense, do you, with the rowing shell, for instance, how often do you go on open water rows to go train and that sort of thing? And, what kind of boat are you rowing exactly for that?
I do a little bit of eights. Which doesn't help me out much at all. I've in the past I would do a 25-mile double in open ocean. It's a marathon row around Gloucester called the Blackburn Challenge. It's probably one of the coolest rows you could ever do. I haven't done that for a while. I'll probably do that one again maybe this year. I don't have a lot of time to get on the water, to be quite frank. I've had a lot of time on the water, probably 5-6 years. And did a prior row. So I feel confident in my abilities to row a shell. The shells are much, much, much wider and much, much more stable than, say a typical Hudson or a Vespoli or something like that you would row in. They're about just about arms, not quite arms width across, and you sit up much higher. So there's a much more stability. Stability is less of an issue. It's much more about form and not banging your oars into the guy in front of you. But
sure.
Yeah.
And so were you ever exposed to junior rowing at all, or rowing before?
I didn't start rowing until I was 42.
Wow. It's very impressive.
So I'm going to be doing this row at 51.
Wow.
This is in general, the people that do the row across the ocean are older. If you did the row across the ocean, you'd be among the top 3 or 2 youngest people ever do it. Typically just because it's expensive and takes a lot of time. You don't have to have that capacity to be able to do that. And there's a certain level of craziness when you get to be over 30. You'll see.
Hey, Bryan, so the last time you did this, so for everybody else, he did this before and he broke the American record. Okay, but one of the things was you got some kind of like minor mishap where a teammate ran up your leg and you had an open wound the entire time. You talked about how you can row your heart out the whole day and end up going backwards. You learned a lot of lessons from the first time, and even like you're a little bit, I'll just say, critical of your captain from last time. What I already know you're a great leader, but what are you going to do differently this time to kind of balance out? And then how many guys on the team?
So there's 4 of us on the team. A big part of it was we really didn't get to know the teammates much ahead of time. We got to go into a little bit, and the relationship wasn't a very good relationship, honestly. There was 8 people on the previous team, and they probably fell in like 3 cliques. You know, I was good friends with 1 or 2 guys, and someone else was good friends with 1 or 2 guys. There was some animosity amongst the captain and the first mate against people that are from other countries, which is kind of ironic because he invited us there. So we're definitely going to do some team building ahead of time. I'm going to have a whole crew fly here. We're going to have some fun. We're going to do probably a fun row from Boston to Provincetown and back. Probably take about 3 days. So team building is a big part of it. The boat that he constructed is, I think he did a good job, but he didn't pay attention to a lot of details. Like there were so many things on the boat were just sharp, and you're basically in your underwear rolling around in a boat that's topsy-turvy, and everything on the boat's sharp. It's got little screws sticking out here and there, and like everything's jagged, and so like the opportunity to hurt yourself on the water is high, and the problem is when you hurt yourself in conditions like that, typically it's very, very difficult to close up a wound. So as you mentioned, I hurt my foot because the captain of the boat ran over the back of my foot with his chair, and he kind of sliced off my heel the third day I was there out of 34 days, and it never really healed. So I was rowing with like a heel that had no skin on it for 31 days, and that's pretty painful. So those are some of the things that we want to be cognizant of ahead of time. Is we want to not only have a crew that's working together in a positive way, much less animosity, and also try to have equipment that's much more geared to a positive outcome.
And so, Bryan, in regards to traveling across the Atlantic, what are the living conditions, and how do you guys sleep, and
Tiny.
That sort of thing?
You sleep quickly.
Yeah.
So there's a little tiny cabin. I can't. My cabin last time was about 7 feet long, and it came to a point like a triangle. Mm-hmm. So the last 6 inches was useless. Right where you'd climb into this little triangle box, there was a giant hole, so you could go underneath the deck. So I really only had about 4.5 feet. So I had to sleep in a ball with my head in the point of the boat, and you have to sleep perfectly evenly because we didn't use a dagger board or anything to help stabilize the boat. So if you leaned, if you were too much on one side of the boat, the center line of the boat, too much on the other side of the boat would list to one side. Jesus. And it'd make it very difficult to row. So you had to learn how to sleep so I slept in a ball like this, kind of like all squished up, because you couldn't really stretch out your legs because then my feet would hang into this hole. And the problem is there was another guy down in the hole. So my feet would like hang into his face, which wasn't cool at all. Yeah, it was complicated, but surprisingly, the sleep was not an issue. You get in there and you would right out. Sleeping on the water like that in those kind of conditions, you'd be amazed how deep your sleep really is. So you can get really good quality sleep for like 5 hours a day.
Wow, that's really great. And so, I assume, I don't know for sure, are you guys rowing 24 hours a day? Do you guys like at night all go to bed? That sort of thing? No,
we row 24 hours a day. Okay. So the reason why we think we're going to be so successful with this, why I think we're going to break a record, is one, we have exceptional rowers. Most of the boats that go across are people who typically aren't good rowers, and it's not to lambaste them, but they didn't do crew in college or never really sat in a crew boat, and maybe rowed a dory a little bit or something like that, but are much more adventurers rather than actual rowers. Mm-hmm. So in this case, we're going to have some pretty significant rowers. Secondly, most teams do 8 hours per person per day. So a team of 6. You'd have 3 row for 8 hours and 3 row for 8 hours. And then typically there'd be 8 hours, just like you suspect, where nobody would be doing anything. The competitive teams will do 12 hours. So you'd have 3 on, 3 off, 3 on, 3 off throughout the day. What we're going to be doing is kind of take it to another level, is we have 4 rowers in 3 seats. Mm. Our goal is to have all 3 of those seats, or 2 of those seats filled 24 hours a day, and the 3rd seat filled 12 hours a day. So we'll be working out to about 15 and a half hours a day of rowing. about 15 and a half hours a day of rowing. What this will do is it will provide 50% more manpower per weight of each person for 12 hours, which should give us 25% more power than any boat that's ever gone across.
Wow, and that's great to hear. And so, in regards to, again, the shell. So how much, is the shell extremely heavy? Obviously it's not the most aerodynamic thing, but
Pete and I could pick up the shell. Yeah. Before it's filled with food and obviously with people. Probably weighs, I don't know, 400 or 500 pounds. So we could pick it up. It wouldn't be comfortable to carry or anything like that. It's not a 2-man carry, but you can definitely lift it up. After you've installed all the equipment, the water, and the people, now you probably gets closer to, ours will be probably close to, I don't know, 1,500, 2,000 pounds when it's all said and done. Like everything's on the boat. Like, because figure all four of the guys probably weigh close to 1,000 pounds together. We're all over 200 pounds. And then you add in the food, and then there's the navigation system, and then the water maker, and then whatever amenities we bring. So we'll probably be close to 2,000 pounds when it's all said and done.
Okay, for sure. And so I know you had mentioned about how there were 3 rowers. And so for the viewers that don't know, sculling and sweeping, sculling is with 2 oars and sweeping is with 1 oar. And so I assume it'd be sculling because, 3 people
it's all
across.
sculling. It's all sculling,
yes.
Yeah. There's been a couple of boats that tried sweeping. It's a disaster. It's a total disaster. Because, like I said, they're not good rowers. They're not good rowers. They're trying to sweep across the Atlantic. It's like the boat's like, it leans port, leans starboard, leans port. And so it's constantly the nose is going back and forth. They're not. It just doesn't work very well.
Bryan, when you were trying to figure that out, I don't know what sweeping and sculling are. The differences of them are.
I think we should have Carter answer this question. He's a national champion.
So sculling is typically 2 oars. So you have one on your port and starboard, left and right. Sweeping, you have 1 oar. It also is still on port and starboard, but it's 1 person per oar. And depending on the boat, so for 8s, for instance, you can have an oct, it's called, and that will be a sculling boat with 8 oars. But then the most common thing is an 8 with sweeping oars. Then it goes down to a 4, quad, double, a pair, and a single.
Okay, that makes sense.
We're actually a trio, I guess. I don't know what we call that. I guess a trace. and then maybe Carter, can you tell Pete the difference between a Macon and a hatchet?
A Macon and a hatchet. I know a hatchet is a type of knife. Macon, I'm not aware.
Okay, so we're gonna be using Macon oars. So a hatchet oar is what you'd see in like a typical collegiate program. It actually looks like a hatchet.
Okay.
It's kind of a rectangular face. A Macon oar looks like a paddle, like a scoop.
Oh,
so
gotcha. Okay,
Macon oars.
For sure. And so, who makes the oars? Concept 2, Croker.
Neither. I don't have the name of the company right in front of me. It's a specialized company that makes them. Yeah, these oars are a lot beefier. Typical sculling or crew oars are probably about, I think, 2 inches in diameter. Mm-hmm. These will be more like 3 inches in diameter, so about 50% thicker. And we'll have 5 sets of oars on board. So 3 sets to be used, and then if any break, we'll still have 2 more sets.
That's awesome. And so I know a lot of people, their perception of rowing is, you can wear, your hands get destroyed and, why don't you just wear gloves? And, I know a lot of people just don't understand. The feel is very different. The way I respond to is, do you wear gloves when you use a tennis racket, for instance? It's very hard to feel the oar out. And so if you're rowing for, 34 days consistently every day, obviously, there's going to be wear and tear on your hands. And, do you just plan on using regular athletic tape? What's your plan?
No, we actually use like a sailing glove. You're 100% right. This is a little more wear and tear than you would have in a typical race because, like I said, it's over, a 12-hour day, 15-hour day in our case. We do use gloves. If you were to get a blister or something like that, it would be pretty bad. So the gloves prevent blisters. They don't prevent calluses. And it's funny because after I get out of my last row, your hands are so big. It's kind of hard to describe. There's like an inch of skin on your hands when you're all done with 30 days. And like I can almost peel it off like an orange when I was done. It's not the most beautiful thing in the world, but yeah, you almost can't even squeeze your hands closed because there's just so much skin on your hands when you're done at the end of 30 days. I guess that'd be something to talk about at some point when we get all done.
So let me ask you the other big obvious questions. How many calories you guys taking in a day? Where do you put all that food? And when nature calls, what do you do?
All right. When nature calls, we have a bucket. And you just throw it overboard.
Okay.
Clean the bucket. You know what? It's one of those things you're like, oh, that's horrible, right? You know, after one day, you're like, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Nobody cares at all. After one day, it's like, give me the bucket. It's my turn, right? To answer your other questions, we use like astronaut food. Typical it's kind of like what you get in the Army for MREs, except it's even drier.
Wow.
An Army ration's not dry per se. You would heat it up in water, but it would already be liquid. You could kind of eat it right out of the bag cold if you wanted to. These are typically freeze-dried foods, and you add hot water to it. So we'll have like what mountaineers call a jet boil. It's like a little propane can and has a little container on top. You put water in it, and so you'll heat up some water in there, and then you pour the hot water into the bag, and then you seal it for a couple seconds, and then you eat a hot meal. Honestly, the food last time was great. I didn't have any problem with it whatsoever. To answer your other question, calories. It's a really good question. We will bring 30 days worth of food for 4 people on board. That's what we'll have. Last time we did the same thing, we went up with extra food. I can't say some people eat 3 meals a day. Some people eat 1 meal a day. Last time when I went across, I was typically eating 1 meal a day. And then I would have these snack packs. And then we had this other thing called Peronin, which is like a maltodextrose mixture invented by NASA. And that would keep me going for like 3 hours and was just honestly fantastic. You know, will be a variety of things, but, you know, as far as calorie intake, it's not going to be enough calories. Regardless, whatever you take in, it's not enough calories. You'll lose a pound a day, regardless of how many calories you take in.
And so when you get to the other end, I mean, you know, do you just go and grub at this local restaurant and eat hours on end?
You know, you think that would be the case, but like, I wasn't, you know, like when you get there, like, they're like, here's a hamburger and fries. And they're like, here's some beer. And I was like, you know, I just want to shower. I want to shower and a glass of ice water. You know, like I was craving like fresh fruit. Like that's what I was craving, fresh fruit. And it's ironic because when we did our row, we landed in Barbados in March, and their fresh fruit season is like June till like November.
Oh no!
And so there's just nothing on the island that's like fresh fruit at all. Like I was like, can I get some oranges or a mango? This is Barbados, and like, oh, no mangoes here, you know. So the freshest fruit I got was French fries, and like I wasn't craving it at all. And like everybody's trying to feed you some junk food, and like you're not interested. I was surprised. I didn't want like you'd think you want a big steak or something like that. I didn't want any of that stuff. I just wanted some. I wanted some fruit. I wanted some orange slices or. It's just something fresh.
Do you guys drag like a line behind to catch a tuna or something?
You could probably reach down with a net and just pick up a tuna. They come right up alongside the boat. In fact, most of the wildlife surrounds the boat constantly. So when you're out in the water, typically you're the only shade anywhere. So a lot of small fish will go underneath the boat and hide underneath the boat, and then larger fish will circle the boat, and then even larger fish will circle the boat for those bigger fish. So it becomes like a whole ecosystem as we go across. Yeah, if you wanted to catch something, you just need a little hand net and just reach into the water and just scoop it right up. And then quite a few fish jump actually into the boat. It's and you have to throw them back out. It's no, you don't want any fresh fish. You don't want that in the boat. You don't want cleaning fish. You don't want to be. There's no time for any of that anyway. We're just at a row. And
so, you know, when you arrive in Barbados, you know, how much publicity is there? You know, is like a whole island, you know, or
no,
I
mean, they do a race every year. Typically, there's friends and family, some press. It's getting bigger and bigger. It's not as big as say, even like the smallest Ironman yet. So there might be 100 people there. A lot of them are Barbadians. When I went, there happened to be a fishing tournament sponsored by Americans. And so there was like probably 50 Americans there. They were not there for the row, but they canceled the fishing tournament that one day because we were showing up. And then so everybody there all came down and was excited to see me. So that was really cool. But yeah, I mean, we'll probably, like I said, when we go across, it'll probably be 30 or 40 people there when we get to the finish line. Because it's tough to plan for timing wise. We don't know when we're coming in until like 5 days before we get there. And the Barbadians aren't typically like, this isn't a Barbados thing. We just happen to land in Barbados because it's an island that's very favorable for this. So yeah, no, it's not as big a deal. We're hoping this year though, if we raise the kind of money I think for Dana-Farber, and for Elpida. This could become a national story, especially if we really smash the record. Nobody's ever done it in under 30 days. If we can do it under 30 days, especially if we can do it 25% faster than the fastest team, come in at 27, 28 days, I think it could make a national news. And then we could actually see some real press there. That would be pretty exciting.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
That's pretty neat. What are the odds that you break the record, do you think? Like, what's your sense right now?
I say 50%.
50%.
We have an exceptionally fast crew. We're going to have an exceptionally fast boat. It's not cheap either. That's why we need some really good sponsors. So if you're out there and you own a big company, this is an awesome opportunity to put your name on something great. And we will be doing something nobody's ever done before. We'll be rowing 15-hour days. Right now, the current record is 3.6 knots across the Atlantic Ocean. If we can average 4 knots an hour, which is still not that fast, if we can average 4 knots an hour, that would be about 10% faster. And I think we're going to be faster than that. 10% faster, we would come in at 27 days. I mean, that would absolutely crush the record. So that's something to consider. The factor that, I would say it's 50% chance, all things being equal, we will definitely do this. If the weather shifts, or there's no current, or the current goes in the wrong direction, or we have some critical failure, or somebody gets hurt, these are all huge factors. You can't predict for all those things. Something's going to go wrong. The water maker breaks, the nav system breaks, we just go in circles. We get hit with a really big storm, the kind that rolls us over a couple of times and takes us out of the race. All those things are possibilities. But I think if we get okay weather, not great weather, just okay weather, we're going to do this.
What's your most likely limiting factor that you can overcome and still get there?
Well, when we plan, so there's a natural current that runs from north of Africa to kind of essentially Barbados, and it's called Trade Wind 1. People have known about it since almost back to Columbus. And if you just push something offshore from Morocco, it's going to wind up in South America somewhere in about 100 days. What we do is we hit that current, so it gives us a little extra push, and the weather tends to be very, very favorable to go in that direction. So in America, we typically have a hurricane season, and the hurricane season runs from, say, August till like November, right? And the reason why we have this hurricane season is that hot temperatures come off of the Sahara, off of North Africa, and they hit the water, and they form these obviously high-low pressure systems. They form, the beginnings of a hurricane, and then it builds up power across the Atlantic, with the warmth, the hot weather, and then, hits America, right? So the weather patterns are always going in that direction. So it's very advantageous for us because we're not fighting against the weather. If we had to fight against the weather, it's anybody's guess when we get across. But the fact we're not fighting against the weather, it's the weather is always pushing us in the right direction. Is a big factor. And it's also a big factor for safety reasons. Like, we're not hitting waves going in two directions. It's another storm coming at us, another storm coming behind us. So waves generally don't crest, which is a big factor. So they might have like a really high wave. Like we saw waves that were probably 50, 60 feet tall when we rode last time, maybe even taller, but they didn't crest. It was just kind of a big rolling wave. And those are fine. So those are the kind of factors. Like if we do run into weather that runs in the wrong direction, that could be a big problem for us.
And so are you truly alone out there? I mean, I know it's you guys in the boat, and obviously you have radios and whatnot, but is there a helicopter following you? Is there other boats, that sort of thing?
That'd be awesome, a helicopter. We will have a drone in the boat. That's going to be something new we're doing this year. Our goal is to actually put together a half-hour, 45-minute movie when we're all done. So we're going to take about 300 hours of footage, and we're hiring a independent filmmaker to put this together. Ideally, we'll sell it to Netflix when we're done. But no, we won't have a boat. Most people think, oh my God, if there's a sailboat following behind you, you're going to be nice and safe. The reality is the safety factor from a sailboat or whatever boat or helicopter, something like that, is pretty relatively limited. If we run into problems, it's because we have big weather, real big weather. If we have real big weather, the sailboat's going to have as many problems as us, if not more problems. The nice thing about our route is it's a shipping lane. There's quite a bit of very large shipping vessels in this lane. So we have radio communication, typical, just regular radio, shortwave. And we also have satellite phones. And then we have a thing called EPIRB, which you let it go and it tells every boats you're in trouble. So we can reach out to quite a few people. So we can use a satellite phone to call home, or we can use the shortwave radio to call the closest ship. Or if we're in trouble, we could just pull the EPIRB out, and that will notify anybody within a 50-mile radius that we're in trouble. And that should be enough there's probably enough boats in that area where someone would turn towards us and come pick us up.
That's really cool. And so shifting the conversation, I was curious, so, now that you've really gotten into rowing and taking it up and doing this trip now, I had the opportunity to go to the Head of Charles this year and race.
Great.
Place fifth. But, do you see yourself, going into any sort of masters rowing or, actual... No, not at all.
No. Look, I'm no speed demon like you. My 2K time might be sub 7, but it's not much better than that. No, I'm on the wrong side of 50 for this. If I did a Masters race, it would just be fun. I've done the Head of the Charles before. Okay. I didn't come in fifth. I did it with a veterans team, and the veterans team was a little bit older. Yeah, no, I'm much more of an adventurer rower, and I like to bring people to rowing because it's such a great sport, and it's one of those things you can do for your whole life. But yeah, I'm under no illusion that I'm super, super fast or anything like that. I'll leave that to you young guys.
So, Bryan, tell us real quick about power rowing, because it's such a driving force in your community. I know you started it, gosh, what is it, 2 years ago with I hope this works.
Almost to the day. Almost to the day. We had our anniversary 2 days ago.
Wow.
Yeah, really exciting. So I was a bank auditor for a number of years, about 12 years, and I was that guy. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to do something I love. I can't waste my time doing auditing for the rest of my life. So I sold everything I had, and I said, I went to from gym to gym to gym and tried out everybody's classes. And I said, well, I think I could do this. It was a lot of hubris, a lot of hubris, And I said, I in the military, non-commissioned officers would teach fitness. And so I was like, I felt pretty confident I could stand in front of people and teach a class. And then I said, well, I'm going to look at the things I see in other classes and then try to come up with some new ideas. And so we try to approach fitness in almost a very different way than other classes do. Power rowing is much more about a community of people trying to stay fit than, a business. So in a class, if Pete, if you or Carter came to a class, you'd wind up meeting everybody in the class. You'd be like, my name's Pete. I'm a rower. I've been a rower for 3 years. I can't quit. That kind of thing. There's a little AA joke there. But we try to look at things like a holistically. So in a typical class, you might have someone as young and fit as Carter, and someone as less young and fit, like say Pete, and they'd be right there together and both getting a great workout because we'd scale the class to each of your abilities, and we would push you based on what you're capable of doing. And a lot of classes kind of miss that point. A lot of classes are like, this is the workout, you're going to do this workout, we're doing 20 burpees, and then some people in the class can't do 2 burpees, so it's like they're kind of missing their mark a little bit. That's something we try to really take care of.
For sure. And so is your classes, are they kind of based like Orange Theory, for instance, where you guys race each other, calorie count, there's a screen. Is it like that type of thing, or is each workout tailored to each person? We don't know. It's not tailored to each person. We have a standard workout, and we would do like a percent of your power. So it's like, Carter, give me 50% of your power. 50% of your power is probably like, say, a 210. 210 for our audience is a split number. A split is how long it takes you to row 500 meters. So if Carter was rowing a 210, it would take him 2 minutes and 10 seconds to row 500 meters, which is pretty fast. And you might have other people in the class who would say row a 250 or a 240. And based on your own abilities, I try to push you to do a little bit more. I'd say, okay, Carter, I know you can row a 210, but give me a 205. And you push yourself a little bit that way. Orange Theory has a kind of a different concept. We don't really talk calories. I've actually never talked calories in any of my classes. I don't tell people how many calories we burn. We're really not focused on that. Much more focused on your cardiovascular development. And you develop your cardiovascular system by pushing your cardiovascular system to above 85% threshold. Orange Theory is about, from my understanding, Orange Theory is much more about keeping you in a fat burning zone
and you'll wear a monitor, and you can see on the monitor that you've stayed in this zone and you've burned so many calories throughout class because you've hit this zone for so many minutes. We're much less concerned about that. There's a growing trend in science that if you want to develop your cardiovascular system, it's much less about how long you do your workout, and it's much more about the intensity of your workout.
Yeah. Yeah. Yanking that string as hard as you can for a short amount of time. That makes sense.
Yep.
The whole high intensity time training, HIT or whatever the acronym is now. That's what it used to be 20 years ago. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You think about a sprinter's body versus like a distance athlete's body. They're both healthy, but one of those bodies is consuming itself a lot more than the other.
Mm-hmm.
So, Bryan, power rowing, are you going to expand? I mean, you said before, like, once I get to about 100, clients, I can think about opening
this row at 51. So I've got to find a new location for this existing location. So I'm looking at a bunch of different places. Once that place gets settled, I'll look to open up a second one, probably in Cambridge or Boston or something like that, because we're in Brookline, it's right next door.
Man, I love that you're doing this, and I love that you're digging in and doing it for charity and all these things. It's just such a fantastic. It's credit to you, but who cares, right? Like you just don't do that for that. You do it because of who you are.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just what you do. The sponsors that you're interested in, if you could make a dream list right now, so they can have a
man. Well, ideally, these sponsors would be in Boston, and some of the big companies in Boston are New Balance, Gillette, Wayfair, TripAdvisor, any number of pharmaceutical companies. We have a ton of them. We have a lot of financial institutions here. So it's going to be, I'm putting together a package to say, this is going to be your return on your investment. Your investment is going to help pay for this boat. But over the next year and a half, we're going to be highlighting you as a company and showing your support for preventing and treatment of childhood cancer.
It's a pretty awesome cause what you're doing. Mad respect.
Mad respect. Carter, look me up when you come out here next.
I will, for sure. I'm planning on going to Charles again this year, so hopefully we can connect.
All right, sounds good.
No, you have to connect. No, hopefully.
Connect.
You have to connect.
Have to connect.
Yeah. Okay, well, listen, Bryan, anytime you want to come on, you want to promote, you need to shout out somebody, let's make space for you, and we'll have you on as a co-host, guest, whatever you want, and anything we can do to support, that's what we want to do.
You're the best, Pete.